What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. My guest today, Sterling Chapman, is a father, husband, regional sales director, real estate investor, podcast host of the Rent Roll radio show, barbecue enthusiast, triathlete, maybe. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And a GoBundance member. So welcome, Sterling. Good to have you, man.
Awesome, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We always start with backstory. So you've been a GoBundance member for about half a year now. You joined earlier this year, it looks like. And but what's your story? What's your backstory? Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I know, but take me from there.
Yeah. So, I came up in Baton Rouge, moved around a bit growing up. My dad was part of a company that just kind of blew up in the late 90s. So we moved around. So I spent middle school in Caracas, Venezuela, half of high school in Houston, Texas, the other half in Boston, Massachusetts. Came back here, went to LSU, and spent my 20s kind of a screw up, bouncing around, selling insurance, doing this, doing that. And then really got focused and kind of got my act together in my late 20s and got on at a top telecom company. And my vision there was to just be this corporate guy. I went back and got my MBA, and my dream was to be the next CFO of this company. And I was getting promoted every year, and it was going great. And then a couple things changed around like 2017, 2018. So the first thing was, in my MBA, I took some entrepreneurship classes, and I was like, man, I'd love to do something, like I'd love to be in control. Like I was always, I was never like a good soldier that, that just followed orders and didn't complain. So like, corporate life was kind of not like, I wasn't the cookie cutter guy for it. So I love the spirit of entrepreneurship and the control and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't good at anything. I didn't know how to do anything. I worked at a telecom company, but really all I was a sales guy. I didn't know how the phones work, So that kind of sparked my entrepreneurial interest. And then I saw my boss of like 17 years. He'd have gone on won all these award trips. And he just, he lost his job because they did, their little surpluses that they do once a year. Somebody in Dallas looks at a spreadsheet and sees your code, and they go, oh, well, we think we can do this role with 21 managers instead of 26. So take these 5, and they don't have a job anymore. And that just terrified me. It terrified me. I was buying my first house with my fiance. We were, about to start having a family. And I just envisioned myself as having like this big mortgage, these car notes, and like have dedicated 80 hours a week of my life to this company for all these years. And like my identity was just so intertwined with it. And then somebody just turning off the faucet. I'm like, that's like what makes people jump out of a window. And that thought process just terrified me. So around the same time, I just got another promotion, was making decent money. I went, to brag to my dad about how much I was making because I was so excited. He was like, well, you need to go find something, smart to do with it, because I've seen so many people make a ton of money and end up broke, and they look like idiots. They're no better than the people who never made the money in the first place. So I started reading, personal finance books. I started with Dave Ramsey. And I went to my girlfriend at the time. I was like, look, we're never going to have any debt, no credit card. And she's like, yeah, whatever. And then a week later, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was like, scratch that. We're going to get as much debt as we can. She was like, whatever. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. People always start Ramsey and go Kiyosaki. That's what I always say.
And so I started buying single family house rentals, really just as like a safety net to, in case I lost my job, can I still like pay my mortgage and some bills? I didn't want to be in that terrifying situation. And so it escalated quickly. I was still, when I started, I was still wanting to be Mr. Corporate America. I just wanted like a safety net under me. And as I grew quicker and quicker and got more units under my belt, I realized that like I could actually probably move a lot faster than I originally, thought. And fast forward from the middle of 2018, when I bought my first rental, to the end of 2019, I had 26 rental units that I was managing myself with a 1-year-old. And I was, doing the day job, and I was pulling my hair out. And at that point I read, it was Joe Fairless's book on apartment syndication. And I was like, oh man, that's great. So that's when I started my podcast, the Rent Roll radio show, to kind of become a thought leader and just force myself to network with other sharp guys and stuff. And really kind of focus on like the syndication model to really scale out. But it was hard. There's a ton of competition. So I kept doing my single family business. Um, I started flipping houses as well as just burning them for rentals. And since then, with some partners, we've syndicated 2 apartment complexes, and I still have my 70 unit rental portfolio down in South Louisiana. And then I'm flipping. I got 14 houses right now that I'm flipping.
Okay.
So
Let's start with this. I was going to go with something on the corporate side, but I want to start here. So you've got 70 single family home combination, maybe duplexes, triplexes, that kind of thing.
duplexes,
Yeah.
triplex, yeah,
Yeah. Under 5, right? So
yeah,
residential, 70 residential
sure.
units, if you will. Plus you're flipping 14 houses and you've got 2 syndications. What does your team look like? What have you built under you to manage all of this? Or are you just sort of doing all of it?
Man, so it's evolved over the years. I definitely have a lot of people that work with me. So I have an assistant, an executive assistant that works in my office here with me, and he actually came to me as like a college kid who wanted to work for me for free to learn about real estate, and I was like, dude, I'll give you $15 an hour right now. Like, and fast forward a few months, I'm like, I don't understand how I survived without that. Like, because I was in the early days, I did everything. I have a lot of crews that do work for me, that work specific on the rehab side. I probably got about 17 guys that are just always rehabbing my properties. I, that pretty much only work for me. And then I have, a dedicated electrician, an AC guy, a granite guy. I've got my insurance. I feel like I'm probably the biggest client at the insurance agency that does all my insurance stuff. So they've got a dedicated woman that just, organizes all my stuff, and probably does more than a typical agent does to help me get through it. And then on the syndication side, that's kind of separate than my single family stuff. Is all just me, really, me and like employees or contract labor, but at the top of the deal, it's really just me. With the syndications, I have 3 main partners, and then we got somebody else to come in and sign for the loan, and we have other partners come in and out. But there's 4 of us. I call it the core 4, and they focus primarily on the acquisition and the asset management, and I focus primarily on the capital raising side. I mean, we all do everything. We meet together twice a week, but if we were to pick our own lanes and our strengths, I enjoy the capital raising the most. And some of them don't like talking to a bunch of people, but they enjoy the hunt, the acquisition side. Another guy doesn't like hunting them, and doesn't like raising capital, but he loves, just being an asset manager and being organized and keeping up with the process. So just different, disc profiles, applied different ways.
Amazing. No, my team with Quantum Capital, it's I'm part of a team with 3 other GoBros, so 4 GoBundance guys, and there's a couple other people on the team. And same thing, marketing, right? That's what I do because it's what I enjoy. That's what I like. Nick is operations, and he is a savant with this stuff. I mean, he knows,
Yeah.
his underwriting. He loves it. He loves diving into a deal and just pulling it apart. That's not what I love. That's his space, right? So everybody has their unique skill set. That makes sense. Your executive assistant, I'm curious, how do you leverage him? So is he involved in all aspects? Is he your sort of your number 2, or are there certain things more administratively that you offload to him? How do you use him?
So there's a lot of things administratively that I just offload to him. I mean, he's a 22-year-old college kid, that doesn't really have a background in finance or accounting. He does all of my bookkeeping, though. My CPA has like trained him to do the bookkeeping, so that's huge. Just keeping all of the books straight. He
Yeah.
does other administrative stuff like tasks around my marketing. He'll email my former podcast guest the assets, and here's all the marketing material we put together for you. Thanks for coming on the show. Let us know if there's, he orders all of the appliances for all of my flips. He sets up all the utilities. I always say, like, if he did nothing but sit on the phone with energy every week, like
Yeah.
he'd be earning his keep. So I'm set to hire another guy in June to take on some more of the marketing. it was actually a referral from a GoBro, which I'm pretty excited about because the GoBro had him doing some work for him for some marketing, for some capital raising. So it's like he's already, and I'm trying to model my new like capital raising platform after this guy's. So it's a great hire because he's had more, more exposure to the process than I have at this point.
Amazing. I love that. That's great. Yeah, that leverage piece. I feel like that's the big pivot in entrepreneurship when you learn the power of leveraging others, right? Like you get it at work when you have a W-2, but you're restricted by your job description and what's allowed as far as like I could never farm out my inbox at my day job. That just wasn't allowed.
Right.
Yeah. I manage my inbox, right? Whereas now, like I'm working more and more to get inbox out of my, like I don't deal with it. Somebody else deals with it and tells me where I need to be, if that makes sense. So I love that with the exec assistant. I've thought about that myself. Like, am I missing out by not having one? And it sounds like you're saying I am. So
we host a local meetup. And so a lot of like kind of startup investors come to the meetup and they're always reaching out for advice or something. And my advice is pretty much always like, you're doing too much. Like you need to stop. It was hard for me to turn my properties over to property management. When I had 26 units, I turned them over to property management, and I would just do the math in my head about like how much I would be paying them, and they probably wouldn't be doing it as good as me. And at the end of the day, they're not doing, they're not leasing as good as me. They probably are better at maintenance because I don't know how to hang a doorknob. But like when I turned it over, I like quadrupled the number of units like in 6 months. And it was like, if I was still managing those properties, I would still have 26 properties.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a sanity cost to property management. You just have to bake in, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like there's a scalability cost. And it's tough because if you've got whatever, 50 doors and you turn it over and you're expecting to pay whatever, 8% management fee, but at the end of the day, it adds up to be like 14% or whatever it is. Right. And you're looking at some of these costs like, man, I could do this for way less, but stay on top of your management company. But at the same time, I get my mental space back to go and do other things, to build in other places. I'm a big fan of that. Somebody countered with like, yeah, but then you got to look at valuations, especially in commercial. They're degrading your valuation overall. I'm like, I get it. I do. But again, depends on what you have. If you've got investors in the deal, more of a worry than if it's my own deal, like my own, 16 unit property or whatever. But there is a I guess you just have to be willing to cede a bit of control in that regard and say, okay, this isn't worth my mental space. Would you agree?
I would. And it does. My first of all, our 54 unit and our 70 unit that we syndicated in Noonan and in Rock Hill, those have really professional managers, and they're doing great. My local portfolio, it's harder to find like solid property management around like a scattered out single family duplex type portfolio, and it's not performing as well as I want. But my thought process has been, it frees up so much of my bandwidth to keep building and keep growing, right? And I've had the W-2 income to keep me afloat. I have the flip revenue. Like I don't live and die off of how much that property, that portfolio cash flows. As long as I can just keep building it and keep like putting assets in the machine, when I leave my W-2, if I need to take it back over or whatever, the machine will be there.
Yeah.
There's for me, I guess everybody's in a different situation, but from the stance I came from, I'm like, just keep it alive long enough for me to just build all this other stuff, and I can revisit it later. I have those assets, they're cooking, they're paying down their debt, they're appreciating. I don't need to leave off the cash flow right now. So ultimately, like at this moment in time, it doesn't really matter how it's being managed.
Yep.
It's still building wealth for me. And if I can be freed up from BS about like tenants and toilets and arguments, you know what I mean? I can go build assets. And then, if I need to go back and self-manage at a later date and build out an in-house property management company, make sure it's done right, then I can do that later. But I'll do that with a much larger portfolio than if I would have just stayed in it at 26 units.
That makes perfect sense. Something else you mentioned that I think is interesting, because I know a lot of people struggle with this, but you've got your own, essentially you said your own crew for the rehab work that you do. How do you keep that crew going. I don't know. That's the, like, you hear so many stories, and I know of stories where contractors are just flake on you. They'll go here, they'll go there. It's getting more and more expensive to maintain them
Keep
and keep
keep
them. And
keep them busy.
yeah,
So I mean, it was really just the evolution. It wasn't, some design that I came up with. It was just the evolution. I found one of these guys. He was working on a early project of mine, and the contractor wasn't paying. So I went and paid him. And then later on, I needed just a little bit of work done, nothing major. So he's like, call me if you ever need work. So I called him, and he did a good job. And then a little more time went on, and he did a good job. And then I just used him for a couple of houses. And then like a flood hit this area, and I had 6 units get flooded up 4 feet. And I was like, can you get enough people together to rehab all these units? And he was like, yeah. He just had a community of people around him. And then I started buying houses quickly. And it was like, well, I know he can source this many people. And just the evolution of it over the last 2 years has been, we have had such a backlog of houses to rehab that I've had the same 17 people working on my houses nonstop. And they can't keep up, So
wow,
that's,
yeah.
that's what keeps them there, that they never run out of work.
How do you find the amount of deals you're finding? Is the question that comes, like, especially in this market, everyone's struggling to
Sure.
find the deals. You got 14 rehabs going at one time. How do you
Yeah.
find the deals you're finding, and where are they? Baton Rouge? Are you all local or?
They're all local.
Okay.
So I would like to go to other markets. I've looked at Alabama a lot, but I just don't have the infrastructure there. I have an infrastructure here that I've built from mostly networking. Like I said, I host the local meetup here that we have, 60 different people come to. I'm part of every, Facebook group and but it's all wholesalers. So I just do what I can to network and meet wholesalers. I take care of them. I don't, you know, I always try and leave money on the table. If I look at a deal and I know I can make money, I won't try and like negotiate them down. I'll let them make their money. I want them to make money because I want them to go out, and they'll send, a wholesaler will get a deal and they'll send it out to 5 cash buyers. The other 4 will try and get them down, and I won't if I don't need to. And so they like to send it to me first. I've had, what keeps happening to me with wholesalers is they figure out how to keep the houses. They start off wholesalers and they're like, wait a minute, I can get funding here and I can flip it myself, or I can get funding here and I can hold it myself. And so they keep graduating out. So I've just created a funnel through the local meetup that attracts, wannabe wholesalers. I'll even fund their marketing. I'll see like a guy who wants to get into wholesaling, who's like hungry and doing the homework, but from not a great area and doesn't have like the startup cost. And I'll write him a $2,000 check and say, hey man, just think about me when the deals start flowing in. Here's your first 2 grand towards your marketing. Yeah, I've done that several times. And I've had a ton of wholesalers that I've gone and wrote a check after the deal was done and just said, hey, look, man, I did really well on this. And I know you only made a few grand. I think you deserve a few more. Here you go. So it's, I take care of everybody as much as I can. But with the meetup, it's very much an abundance mindset thing, because I know a lot of other investors that they start with this, like they think being a shrewd negotiator is what makes them a great businessman. That's bullshit, man. What makes you a good businessman is having people want to do business with you over and over again. That's why I always try to leave something on the table. That's why like I have an abundance of investors, an abundance of deal flow, because everybody loves to work with me, because I'm not trying to squeeze every penny of profit out of each interaction. I'm trying to create an equitable situation that they want to come back and get more of. So one, I have friends that would never share their resources. If they had a honey hole, if you will, if they had a wholesaler that was bringing them good deals, they wouldn't want anybody else to know them. Man, I will bring my wholesalers to my meetups and have them raise their hand and say, hey, all you cash buyers, call Gary, call this guy. He's got deals. He'll put you on his list. And you would think I'm creating my own competition, but just that it's not worked out that way. all this stuff that I introduce. People want to get into being cash buyers and flipping or burn houses and buying rentals. I introduced them to my lenders. I'm like, dude, you can just put, so for whatever reason, I just stay in the crossroads of all this activity, and I just have an abundance of deal flow come to me out of just trying to help as many people around me as I can.
I love that, man. That's the ultimate connector, right? You're like you said, that abundance mindset, giving mindset. It's what drives everything. I love that story, man. And the meetup is near and dear to my heart. That's how I started in real estate. Was I didn't know what to do. I started a meetup. Nobody was buying multifamily or nobody was a multifamily investor at the local meetups. So I started a multifamily meetup, and it became a popular thing here in Michigan. COVID, obviously derailed it a little bit, but yeah, it's those meetups and networking are so powerful. And I was actually going to ask you about that with capital raising. Is that the same approach? Are these meetups and sort of being abundant in your mindset? Like, how are you raising capital the way you are for the syndications that you're doing?
So with it's weird. So a lot of people will say, I talk to multifamily investors all the time. They're like, oh, well, I used to do single family houses, but I've graduated and I don't do single family houses anymore. I only do. I'm like, okay, but I would have left millions on the table if I quit doing single family houses when I started looking. I've been looking for large multifamily properties for 3 years and I've got 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know how many single families I've done in the in between? Like, what do you do in the other 9 months of the year? You know what I mean? So I'm posting online all the time my flips, my BRRRR projects, my meetup stuff, and people just see it. Everybody wants to be a part of it. Everybody's drawn to it. They'll direct message me, hey, how can I get involved? Hey, I want to invest some money. Everybody's done with the stock market. Everybody's done with the other thing. They want to be in real estate, but most of them don't have the time. So, I always tell people, you can invest with me in one or two different ways. You can give me some money, like as a private note, and I'll, for my flipping business, or you can be an equity partner in the apartment complexes and you can participate in the upside. So, a lot of people I've taken on as debt partners in the meantime until we find another project. And then, normally, like during our last raise on the 70 unit in Rock Hill, like we had to give money back. We had to say, sorry, can you, like, I know you wanted to put in, 100, but can you just do 50 on this one?
How do you nurture that list? Is it a newsletter monthly? Like, how do you stay in front of people so that when that 1 or 2 deals that did come up, you over raise for it? How do you stay relevant to that audience?
Well, the answer is historically I don't. So I'm in the process of redoing that for the very reasons you're asking. So I spent it's hard to create that much content and to build out the system, but I have I created an ebook and then I created a little drip campaign with active campaign to kind of, when they download the ebook, we'll send them 4 emails that introduce them to my brand and, hey, go listen to the Rent Roll Radio show. Hey, go go check out this website. Go do that. Never got a ton of traction, and I was always very good at getting investors in the hopper. Like, yeah, where do I invest? But it's the deal flow on the large multifamily side has not been as flowing as it is on the smaller side. So it's keeping them warm has been a challenge. So I recently bought a bunch of marketing material from the Good Egg Investments people. Do you know them?
I've heard of them. Yeah. I don't know them, but I've heard of them.
It's a bunch of, it's a bunch of articles and it's a bunch of blog and drip campaigns that's kind of designed to, fish out. So you fish out investors and then kind of keep them warm with these blog articles and stay top of mind. And I'm going to create a newsletter that I'll be sending out monthly, but I'm currently in the process of getting my website redone, getting my active campaign campaigns redone, and getting that newsletter set up. So hopefully I should have all of that online in the next week or so. But
yeah, but you've cultivated this relationship with people, right? Where when you do have something to raise for, they're there for you. And now you'll automate and systematize and do all of that stuff, but it still comes down to relationship building. That's the core of what you're great at.
You can automate it and build these systems, and then at the end of the day, end up in everybody's spam. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I
100%.
mean, like
100%.
everybody that's invested with me, it was a relationship thing. It was a referral from a friend, or it was, somebody who I met, or somebody saw me doing stuff on Facebook and sent me a direct message.
It's
So
funny. Yeah. On the spam thing. So I put together a deal that I let a bunch of GoBundance guys know about, and they dropped their email address, and we sent it out to 40 emails that asked for it. Like, yeah, send me that deal. 3 got it. 3. The rest all
yeah.
went to spam. So you're
And
right. It's hard to
my own emails go to my spam,
mine.
which messes with my head so
I know.
much.
I
Every
know.
time I can't even send myself an email, I ask, what am I doing with myself here? Like, why am I doing this? But they get about a 40% read rate. So I don't know if it's just how my email settings are, and I'm not that tech savvy, but I don't know if it's just how my email settings are set, because 40% of at least 40% of them are getting them because they're opening them. Which, if you send it out to 100 people that and 60% of it aren't getting it, that's dramatic. Like, you're like, oh man, I'm sorry, my 60 buddies didn't see the email I tried to send. But if you send it out like on a large scale, and you're like really like running ad campaigns and got tons of lead magnets out there, and you're getting like thousands of people in the funnel, and like, out of the 2,000 people that came in the funnel, 800 open your email. Well, like, now you're getting somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, that's good. That's good numbers when you look at it that way. But when you're managing like personal relationships, and like 60 of your friends didn't get the invite to your birthday party, like that's a bust. But when you're like, when you're out there, like, you know what I'm saying, collecting large sample sizes, that's when it's effective.
Brandon Turner. I had a conversation with a guy recently, another GoBundance guy, about raising capital. Because this is my reality with raising capital. No matter what you think you can raise, like when you first are going to raise capital, it's like, well, I got this much that I can raise from. I mean, I'll be real conservative. I know I can raise this much, but the reality is you end up raising this much, right? And if you're not seeing my hands, like, it's never, at least the first time, it's never as much as you think you can raise. It's not even as much as the most conservative estimate that you think you can raise. It's lower than that. It just is, right? Like that. People are be interested. They'll talk to you, but when it comes down to putting their money out there, it takes some time to get that first capital raise. And I said that to my buddy. It's like, it's really the size of the list. Brandon posts all the time, 1,000 investors, right? But his list is 100,000+. So it's literally like 1% of his entire audience is actually investing, but the number is still huge. 1,000 people at $100,000 a piece. That's a lot of money, So right. Yeah, I'm completely with you. A big number is the way to go.
As a sales guy and a sales manager throughout my whole corporate career, it all boils down to those funnels. I mean, back in the insurance business, we used to call it like 10-3-1. Like, for every 10 people you call, 3 people will agree to meet with you, and 1 of them will buy from you. Same thing with the team I coach now. They're just, you've only got so many variables here, and there's only one you can control, and that's the activity. That's the number of people you're calling, or the number of doors you're knocking on. So it's the same concept here. Like, just get a larger number of inputs, and then that's how you control your output. That's a small ratio of that.
Have you looked into texting or no SMS?
I haven't. I've seen that I've talked to. At one point, I was planning on trying to source my own single family properties and go at it. That I never followed up with that, just because I found more success with nurturing the relationships with the wholesalers who were doing that work. Yeah. But I looked at it there. They had some programs where they would charge you per message and send it out, but it's never anything I've actually done.
Curious on the nurture part of it. It feels like there's opportunity there, but who knows? I don't know. I haven't dove fully into it either at this point. The Rent Roll Radio Show. I'm curious, why start a podcast, and how much has that been a part of all of what we're talking about right now, as far as nurturing, potential investors and all of that?
Well, so it's a funny topic, because it's one of the things that gives me credibility with all of the other things. I used to say that about my MBA and my corporate job. Like, did it get me the promotion that I had an MBA? No, but it was probably like one of the 5 things that helped, build that brand. So, what I found in the early days of the podcast was, I had a hard time getting listeners, but what I didn't have a hard time getting was guests. It was so crazy, because I could call these really successful guy, Jay Scott and Matt Faircloth, and I was a nobody, and they would just come on my show. It's fun. I think Gino Barbaro was he was on my show, and a week later I saw like an advertisement where he was selling like an hour of coaching for like $3,000. I'm like, dude, I got my hour for free. When you have a podcast, everybody will talk to you because everybody wants to get their message out. And so that was huge from a point of like me networking, continuing to learn and continuing to network. And then, when I approached people about investing, they would go through well, why should we trust Sterling with our money? Well, he's interviewed 150 other real estate investors. So like he's done his homework there. He's got a finance degree and an MBA. He's got all this experience with all these houses. He's got, it's just one more thing that kind of helps build the credibility of the brand. Now, recently viewership has gone up. I actually hired a marketing company to market the podcast. So the downloads have like tripled in the last 2 months because of that. So it's and I have a couple investors that found out about me through my podcast, but I'm anticipating now that I'm paying for marketing on the podcast side and I'm paying for marketing on the drip campaign side that the two will kind of help me blow up together. Because what it does is it allows you to access larger deals, right? Because right now I'm like, okay, well, I could easily raise like $3 or $4 million. So what is that? Let's go look at 70 unit deals, right? But we're not going to go look at 250 unit deals because I couldn't easily raise $15 million, right? But if I invest in the marketing, that gets me to where I could easily raise $15 million. Well, there's a lot smaller buying pools at the 250 unit than there is at the 100 unit because everybody else is in the same boat. So the idea is accessing more funding will allow me to access more deals because it'll widen the size that I can go after.
Love it. No, that makes perfect sense. Something I wanted to pivot over to, and my mind just went blank on it. Oh, the W-2. I'm looking at it right here. So through all of this, you've got this job. You got this job, and you said, maybe this is the last year for this job. I don't know, but what is the metric or the milestone that you need to meet for you to feel comfortable walking away from your job? Is it that, or is it just I don't know? Like, what is it? What keeps you at your job versus what is the point at which you feel like it's time to go?
Yeah, that's a moving target, and a lot of it is emotional from like how we were raised. Like because what I have is a really good job. When I started investing in real estate and like shifting my energies and efforts, everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, you have a great job. What do you do? Like, we would all kill to have your job. So to see me throw it away or walk away from it, I mean, everybody's like, you're insane. I'm not in GoBundance, but like, you know what I mean?
I was going to say changes when you join GoBundance, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Which is one of the reasons I joined, right? For that shift. But it's, the psychology of being raised, my parents were corporate America, everybody I knew that was comfortable was corporate America, having that steady paycheck, those insurance. But for me, I want a certain amount of passive income and a certain pile of cash, so the market's going crazy, right? With interest rates, we don't know what the next few months are going to look like. And so that number is larger than it was, say, a year ago when we just thought we were confident it was going to go on forever, right? Because now, like, well, what if we go into this crazy crash bear market for the next 2 years? Like, do I have enough if if a bunch of my rentals go vacant and I can't flip houses anymore, like can I carry on for 2 years? So I mean, for me, I want 500 in cash and I want 200,000 net passive cash flow from the rentals.
Got it. I got it. Is that to replace income, or is that just expense plus some? Is that kind of what that 200K number is for?
That replaces income.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, the thing is, and yeah, I heard you talking about this on your last podcast. I don't ever want to go back to work. I don't want to be a struggling entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like, my job's not bad. It's not, I've always had the flexibility to do both, if I worked at a plant or something, if I was punching a clock and 40 hours a week and had to choose, I would have chose a long time ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But given the flexibility and the great job, I just wanted to make sure I was like absolutely comfortable and never going to have to go back. I didn't want to like quit and give up this good job up here to go fail at entrepreneurship and then have to come back to W-2 life back down here.
Yeah. I'm curious with real estate and investing, what is your, I don't know, 1 to 10? How do you feel about it? How much love or joy do you have in real estate investing? Is it more of a means to an end, or is it something I really enjoy this?
I really enjoy it. And, I really enjoy the people. I really enjoy the energy. I love getting deals. Like I get high on it. No matter how much money I had, I would still chase the projects because it excites me.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't want to be Grant Cardone. I don't need to be a billionaire.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want to spend more time with my family. I want to have freedom. I don't want to be the billionaire who's on their fourth wife and just dies alone with this big pile of money and their kids hate them because they were workaholics. That's not my goal in life. My goal in life is to get to where I'm financially free enough or independent enough to go to all of my kids' games, to be able to travel with my wife 6 months out of the year, to have all this freedom. Now, I'll probably never quit working, right? Because I enjoy the projects and the process, but I don't want to be sucked into this addicted to the grind where, I'm hundreds of millions of dollars in and I'm still ignoring my wife and kids to work 18 hours a day. Like that's
Sure.
not my end goal. And some people's mission in life is to build the biggest and best company. But mine is to be a good husband and a good father. And I just feel like the financial freedom associated with the investing will allow me. We all struggle with the balance, right? Especially when you're still in the day job and the real estate and the kids.
You're building.
And you're building. And so, I get pushback from my wife and from everybody about like, you work so much. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm working so much now, so I don't have to work later. Right. Like, like I'll never have to punch a clock again. I'll never have to miss a game again. I'll never, if we could just nose down for this little 5-year window, then the next 25 years can be completely different than you ever imagined being an adult would be like. You know what I mean? Sure. Like I always say, like retiring 25 years early, it's like adding 25 years to the end of your life.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm curious, what does your pod say? You mentioned like only except coming to GoBundance, the day job is the thing that doesn't. What do they say about you, the day job, plan, all of that stuff? What's their feedback?
My GoPod, we just got together. So I've met with my GoPod twice.
Gotcha. All right. So you're starting to bond and get to know each other just now. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
They're not yelling at me and holding me accountable yet.
No, it's interesting because it's what you said that I realized, not in the moment, but after the fact, that was really the drive for me to get at my job. Because I wasn't at a place where I replaced my income. I wasn't. So a lot of people on the outside world, if you will, saw it as crazy and risky again, but you had a great job. It was pretty easy for me at that point. I was seasoned and it wasn't bad. It was fine, right? It was a good job. So I had that, but on the inside, especially with my pod and having been around them for 2 years at that point, I mean, just the way they spoke about it, and they never said it this way, but I took it this way later. It was like, there's things we do in life that we do them. Well, let me take a step back. We spend a lot of time with certain things, a lot of time with our family, a lot of time with our work, a lot of time with our job or whatever it may be. Right. And we spend a lot of time with our family and hopefully with our work because we just love it. It's just, we love, like you said, when I asked about real estate, you sat up at the desk, you're like, freaking love real estate. It's exciting. I love deals. Boom. Right. With your family, I want to spend time with them. I want to give 25 years back. Right. There was this love, but for some reason, and it's conditioning, because I know for me, it was not bad is acceptable for what I did most of, what I spent the most time, more than even with my family. Not bad was acceptable. So I got to a place where I didn't realize at the time where I wasn't willing to accept a significant part of my life being successful equal to not bad. Does that make sense? So that was like my jumping point. And somebody else I talked to in GoBundance said this, and it helped me at least justify it. It's like, look, man, you get to 50, 60% of where you were, jump and know that you'll make up the other 40 way faster once you're out. You got to give yourself that runway of time. And I'm like, that's a great point. Doesn't mean there's not ups and downs, but that was for me a big pivot point. That idea that, you know what, I couldn't stand not bad being such a significant part of success in my life. It just bothered me. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what kind of came to my mind. Sorry, you look like you want to say something. Go for it.
Yeah. So it's so funny because, in the early years of my career, I was like number one, and, I was just breaking records and getting promoted all the time. And I was just
Every year. Yeah.
such a high achiever. And over the last few years, it's been like a steadily decline, like a fade, and like the passion's gone. And and like my boss will, I mean, they all know what I do. I try and keep it under wraps, but I mean, you've seen my Facebook,
Sure.
and so, I mean, I always block them, but every time, I got 12 employees, like, when they get pissed, they go stalk me and it comes up. But like, my boss will get irritated, and he'll like, yeah, you used to be like this top performer and you're just not. And I'm like, I made more money flipping houses last month than I did at 18. I did at my job all year. Like, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, like with corporate America, you run as fast as you can, and they go, oh, he can run fast, let's turn up the treadmill. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like all of my energy now goes into my future and my family's future, like building stuff for me. Whereas over there, it's like all of my energy, I just get a little tiny sliver of my energy back.
Yeah.
And I can't be passionate about that anymore.
That's so true, man. I can't tell you how many times I was told, yeah, hey, you're doing great. We got this department that needs, like, no one else will do it. We know you could do it. It's lateral, no more pay, but great opportunity for you for the next job, right? That happened like 3 times, like slide over, because I was the only one that would do it. Travel or take a department that might not be there in 6 months, and you may not have a job, but if it's successful, oh, your trajectory so much. And after a while, you're right. It's just like, for what? For what's the return here? And to your point, I used to love what I did. You know what changed for me, to be honest with you, when I think about it? It's 2 things. One is when I started, it was a much smaller company. I mean, still 10 billion, but still much smaller. So there was a lot of room for creativity. Like, you get the job done. Hey, look, this is what we want to get done. Just figure out a way to get there ethically within this box. And then at the end, it became the mantra of follow the process. Just follow just follow the process. Don't get creative. Follow the so that's
bureaucratic box checkers.
Oh my God. It just for what I got paid, especially, it was like, I can't stand it anymore. Like, I couldn't deal with it. So one, my creative energy was just completely snuffed out, if you will. So that passion went down dramatically, for sure. I thought the next job would get me there, but then I realized, no, I'm just a higher paid box checker, like, to your point. And I forget what the second thing is, but anyway, it's funny how that happens. I resonate with that story, that, yeah, you get to this point and it just sort of wanes, and now you're on that trajectory.
So in 2019, I was, 2019, I had, 12, 15 rentals or whatever. I mean, by the end of it, I had 26. But in 2019, I had this job. I was a regional director, and I was flying all over I had like 13 employees in like 13 states. And I was flying all over the place. And I had the job that, like, I'd always dreamed of as a kid. Like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I was wearing suits and flying all over. I was an important businessman and corporate man. And my wife was pregnant, and she was on bed rest. And she was like, she was on bed rest. Like, she had to go to the doctor, like the hospital, in the middle of the night a few times while I was in like Birmingham or DC or something. And I remember flying home like on a Friday night, like 11 o'clock. I was landing in New Orleans. I was still going to have to get in my car and drive an hour to get home at midnight. And I was 34 at the time. And I saw this guy that was like 56, 2 seats ahead of me, wearing a wrinkled suit he had on since 4 o'clock that morning, just like I did. He was me in 20 years. And all I could think was, what a chump.
Yeah.
Like, what a chump. Like, when I'm that
crazy?
age, I want to be sitting on a beach in a sandals and a board shorts, or like sitting in my backyard with my kids barbecuing. I don't want to be on a freaking plane in this like uncomfortable wrinkled suit. Like, so is that paradigm shift in my head. I was like, that's just not what I want to be when I grow up, or it was, always was.
Yeah.
I just started looking at it from a different lens.
Amazing. Wow. All right. So syndication is the next thing, it sounds like, for you. Where are you going with that? Are you looking at deals more? Are you kind of give me an idea of what's next for you?
So like I said, I have my partners with Clear Bay Capital, and we, we've done really well. I mean, I think everybody's done really well over the last few years. Like we've had such a wind at our back that it's hard to, but we've done really well with our first two projects, and so we're aggressively trying to find more. I'm looking at, like I said, building out my capital raising machine at, I think, a faster pace than my partners are building out the acquisition team. So I've entertained raising for other operators, and I've talked to them about that. They don't feel like I'm cheating on them or anything. They, their thought process behind that is like, if I can satisfy the investors and keep giving them something, you know what I mean, it'll allow me to grow bigger and always have the funding for the projects they find. So I've entertained working with some other operators, but I'm kind of limited about that because I I want control and I want oversight and I want, I don't want to, you see this all the time in the industry where people are kind of, you know, whoring themselves out to all these different syndicators. And I was trying to think of another word to not use that on the show, but I couldn't.
That's fine.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you're like, well, they don't even know what lender they're using. They don't even know what property management company they're using. And I'm like, well, if you lose your investors' money, like, what are you going to tell them? You don't have answers to any of these questions,
Mm.
So I like my group that I'm working with because we're tight, man. We talk constantly. We're on meetings constantly. I'm in every aspect, intimate with every aspect of the project. And if I were to go, maybe raise capital for one of these other larger groups that seems to constantly have deal flow, I'd be nervous that I would lose a little bit of that. And that's not, that's not the comfort. I don't have a comfort level with that. I don't want to place my investors' capital where I don't know it's safe. And so I'm open to other types of partnerships if I was more involved with them. But from here, it's just turn up the capital machine and push my partners to be more aggressive on their offers. They're watching the market just like everybody else. Everything's with the interest rates, everything's changing. We got to be more conservative because we don't know what the future looks like. So, but hopefully with this softening that it'll create more opportunity, because the last couple of years it was so hot that there was just people were overpaying for everything. And if you're not willing to overpay, then you're not getting deals, So people always ask me, you think the market's going to crash? I'm like, I sure hope so. I could use some good opportunities,
Well, we were talking before we started recording about that maybe in the higher level luxury segment, right? 6, 7, 800,000 and up kind of thing,
Right.
might be due for a correction unless my prediction comes true, which is the Fannie buying the 50-year mortgage. But we'll see what happens with that. I don't know even if that happens, but it'll certainly help stave off some of the correction at the top level. But I think you're seeing it now. Anything that's 1.2, 1.3 million. I talked to guys at GoBundance that are realtors, like, yeah, it's not as much action there. There's still offers on the $500,000 product, but like we talked about, it might not be 12, it's 7 now, but still it's a lot of offers on one property, and that'll probably sustain for the next few years, I think.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure.
we shall see. We shall see. So GoBundance, talk to me about that real quick. You've been in GoBundance for about 5 months now. What has it meant for you? What has it been for you? What experiences have you had? Kind of just share a little bit about your time in GoBundance so far.
Sure. So like everything, I always say I'm bad at everything because I've got so much going on right now. Right.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and GoBundance is no exception. I like to jump before I get get too busy to jump or decide not to. And I'd always wanted to join GoBundance. I'd heard about it from Brandon, from, Bigger Pockets over the years. And in the early days, I didn't qualify. And then when I did qualify and I had the money, I was like, well, I got way too much going on right now. I don't have time to do this. But if I hold off, I'll like look back in 6 months. And, so I jumped and I paid the money to join. And then I didn't really have time to follow through much on it. So, like I'd mentioned, I travel a lot for the multifamily conferences, and I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old or 1-year-old. So I guess I get my wife yells at me all the time because I get their ages wrong, but I guess it progresses. I guess one's almost 3 now and one's 1.5 now. But leaving her alone with them is a lot. So I try and like really negotiate down my travel. So I haven't been in a on a trip yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. I have, I communicate daily with my local group. We've had some local Louisiana meetups here. Really, I've gotten tons of value just out of that. The first meetup I went to was with the Louisiana tribe. We went to Top Golf, and we were sitting there, and one of them goes, "Oh, you don't cost seg your single family homes? You're single?" I was like, "No, I thought that was just really something you did for the larger deals." He goes, "Oh, they got this guy. Look, we all use him. He'll virtually do it for like $300 a pop, and it makes sense." Dude, right there, that saved me hundreds, or like that way more than paid for my $10,000 admission fee. Just that little tip and that little contact they shot me, and then I was mentioning I was looking at a beach house in Alabama, and they sent me that zero down credit union. That was a tip from a GoBro. So just the, I mean, if nothing else, being in constant communication with the guys in Louisiana around me, and that's been very valuable. We just got set up in our GoPod, so that those guys are great. I love seeing them. I love the advice from that I get in the Quitting Your W-2 micro tribe. A couple of weeks ago we were on there, and it talked about how you get insurance, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Like, I feel better knowing that there's a solution for that, because that's a question that would have come up, So really eager to go on an event. Definitely want to do one before the end of the year. So I was looking at Detroit. And I was also looking at Dallas. Dallas would probably be easier for me, and I imagine would have more people there. So we'll see. But I definitely love the guys I've met, and love the whole concept.
I think that's a great point, because I talked to a lot of guys about joining, and I think there's a need to hear all of the things that I get for 10 grand or 15 grand or whatever you join for, champion or elite or whatever. And that's a great way of articulating it. Like I don't use everything that GoBundance offers, right? I'm not on the calls. I'm on very few, as a matter of fact. I got kids, young kids at night. It's 7:00 at night. I'm not doing, I got bedtime, right? Like maybe a 7 to 8 call, because it's only up for a couple of days. But beyond that, it's hard for me to get on those evening calls and still be, committed to being the dad I want to be. I mean, I'm micro tribes. I miss so many micro tribe calls. But to your point, I do a local chapter meeting and one thing pops up, or I meet a guy at a conference or at an event or whatever, and I become a partner with him or whatever, right? Like it's just this one little thing here or there. It's just, you get into a room where there's tidbits and nuggets of information that are $10,000 plus in value. And I know that sounds silly and simple, but that's really, to me, the value of paying the money. Like, I don't have the time to go out and find the kinds of people I need around me, but I got 10 grand and I can put 10 grand. It's not going to change my life if I do nothing with it. But man, if I get one thing for this 10 grand, like you said, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of value, depending on what it is. It's worth it. It's worth it. And the likelihood is that you'll get one thing. That's all you need.
Sure.
I don't know. So I always tell people at this point, go to GoBundance.com and apply. Whether you're a millionaire or not, we have programs for everything. But man, that's a great way of looking at it. It's those little tidbits. I always liken it to like real estate. Like, you move into a neighborhood and there's amenities that you might not use the tennis court, but it's there if you want to, right? You might not use the community pool, but it's there if you want to. And when that one time everybody's neighborhood kids come over or whatever, and you take them to the pool, so worth it. It was worth having it in your neighborhood or whatever. So yeah. And that's my way of looking at it. All right, let's wrap this on a question from the GoBundance card game. And the question is, what kind of online course would you create to share your wisdom?
Oh man.
Told you I wasn't going to tell you at the jump.
So it's funny. It's a funny topic, because, in the real estate space, there's so many gurus, and you balk at a lot of them, but then there's also some valuable education out there. And you talk about like Whitney Sewell and these other guys that paid Joe Fairless $50,000 to, and then the next thing you know, they bought $100 million in real estate. Like, they'll tell you that's the only reason that happened. So like, you can't balk at all of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I was going to create an online course to share my wisdom, Would it be, I guess, what would be the topic of it?
Sure. Yeah, let's go with that.
I would think it would be about, I mean, obviously it would be about real estate. I would think it would be about the people side of real estate. That's what I think most people miss is the vow is how to make those connections and how important that is to the whole process. Like you can read a million books, you can study everything, you can go make offers to, you know what I mean, to stuff you find on market. But like to me, 100% of the value has come from the connections I've made. I mean, 100% of it, right? Like I
Yeah.
get all my deals from the wholesalers. I wouldn't have met the wholesalers if I didn't go network at meetings. The lenders I meet, when I first started, I remember calling like 20 something banks because nobody would do the type of loan I wanted. And like, if you just like most people, this is a pet peeve of mine. Most people will like call like Chase or Capital One and they're like, oh, they told me I can't do that kind of loan. And then nobody will do it. Well, look, if they tell you nobody will do it, they're either an idiot or a liar because everybody will do some kind, everybody will structure a loan some type of way. You just need to ask enough people. So I don't want to do business with you either way if you're an idiot or a liar. But that's a big pet peeve of mine because if a bank doesn't do something, they'll tell you nobody will do it, but somebody out there will do it. So just like, but networking with the lenders that make the deals together, the contractors that do the work, every part of this is part of a human connection. And that's the most, I mean, every business is a people business, but this one's most importantly.
Dude, there's two things that you just said that really resonate with me. One, I was privileged to be on the Bigger Pockets podcast over a year ago now. And I talked about calling 14 banks to get the loan product I needed for the duplexes I was trying to buy. And then they do like the quick tip at the beginning. That was the quick tip they use, call 14 banks and then explain what that meant. So I completely agree with you. That's what Chase, Bank of America.
Maybe that's why they've been ignoring my application for 2 years because that was my tip.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe. Like we already got this.
We already got that one. Yeah.
No, he's already done it. That's a good point. But the second thing is with Brandon specifically, I remember seeing a post, a story where somebody said, look, I got this and that. Other than networking, what can I do? And he's like, networking. Like people want to bypass that to your point. Like they understand that it's valuable. They understand what's the word? Logically that there's value in networking, but they don't look at it. I love the title of the course because you're right. This is a full on, I don't want to call it like a contact sport, but it is, man. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. Then you got to follow up and you got to add value. Like you said, you got to be abundant minded. I think that's brilliant because that is something that people don't want to do. It's like, yeah, okay, I get networking, but it's the same thing. I've been to 2 RIA meetings and it didn't work. Fair?
I mean, but people like, it's so weird. I get super uncomfortable in crowds. Like I don't like people because I'm very extroverted. People don't ever believe that. But like I could talk on a stage, but like in a crowd, I'm like I don't want to interrupt. Those people are talking to each other. I don't have anything to say. It's kind of awkward. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm like nervously trying to ask a girl on a date when I'm just saying like, hello, what do you do? But if you keep putting yourself, what I've just keep going back until people like approach me or like I find like something of value to offer somebody. And I get people in one-on-one settings. And that's when I really enjoy talking to people. But yeah, I don't like the crowds. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by the crowds. They'll go and they're like, I don't know anybody. These people all seem to know each other and they're talking to one another and I don't want to interrupt. So they'll sit in the corner. And I think it's on the onus is on the group to make sure they're included. At our meetup, if I see somebody in the corner, I'm like, hey, come on. Hey, meet John. Hey, meet, you know what I mean?
The ultimate connector. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Sterling, where can people meet or learn more about you or follow you or wherever you want to direct them?
Yeah, I mean, they can, I'm really active on Facebook and then, they can go see our website, crestworthcapital.com.
Beautiful. Great meeting you, man. Great having you on. I appreciate you being on today.
Look forward to meeting in person.
Yeah, we will. We will. Detroit or Dallas, it sounds like.
Yep.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.